political analyst Asanda Ngoasheng now joins us to unpack recent developments in the ANC and the resignation of Dr. Msimang. Thank you so much for your time on the show, Asanda. I mean, after 60 years, drawing the curtain on his political home, how big a blow is this resignation for the ANC?
I think it's a very big blow because one of the things, I was listening to Fikile Mbalula's responses or his comments around this. And I think that, one of the things he doesn't understand is that one of the reasons some people still vote for the ANC is because there are veterans who continue to call the ANC out, and there are veterans who continue to challenge the prevailing thoughts and the things that are happening within the ANC, which makes people believe that as long as there are still people calling these things out, all hope is not lost. And so when you have somebody of Msimang's character, somebody of Msimang's caliber, and somebody of Msimang's history within the ANC leaving and saying they're finally throwing in the towel, it's really not a bad look for the ANC, and it really doesn't bode well for it, particularly as we head to 2024.
I want us to go back to the comments that he made in that interview that we just saw earlier on, in as far as President Cyril Ramaphosa is concerned. But just looking at how he ended his letter that he had sent to the ANC in terms of his resignation, he says, "Consequently, I have come to the realization that my time and energies would be better spent elsewhere." I mean, what can we read into those words? Do you think he might be joining a new political home, or is this the time for him to retire?
No, I don't see him as somebody who would be joining a new political home. I think it's more a matter of him declaring that he's going to spend his time possibly retiring, but also I would imagine this is a very political man. So I'm sure he's going to be engaged in civil society and other structures of society that have an influence on politics to be able to influence the direction that South Africa takes. Because I think, sometimes we make the mistake as South Africans of thinking that the only way to participate in the political system is to be part of a political party, whereas there are many other structures that exist for people, including civil society and other civic organizations that work to hold government accountable, which would really benefit from the experience of a man of his caliber.
And just going back to what he said, of course, in his resignation letter, as well as in that interview that we saw earlier on, Dr. Msimang accusing President Cyril Ramaphosa of surrounding himself with shady characters, which affects him doing his job. I mean, it reminds you, of course, of former President Thabo Mbeki, as well as Kgalema Motlanthe, as well as former President Jacob Zuma. In fact, the three presidents at the same time calling out the inner workings of the ANC and how it is degenerating into something that is not of its glorious form. I mean, those are weighty words. How well received will they be, do you think?
Well, I think that, ANC people are going to be upset, as we've already seen. They're saying that veterans must stop campaigning against the ANC. And the reason for this is because they understand that South Africans still look to those people who were involved in the actual struggle for liberation in South Africa. Because some of the people we see, the generations of people we see who are in the ANC now, who are younger, were not necessarily involved in the struggle, and they didn't necessarily give up their lives in order to fulfill their mandate and what they saw as their purpose in life as the liberation of South Africans. So what we're seeing is really a clash of values between the old people who are part of the Veterans League, who were and did give up their lives and just disrupt their family lives in order to fight for the struggle for South Africa. And you've got the values of the new people who, some of them only joined the ANC because it held the potential for positions of power, and it held the potential for access to money and tenders and everything else in between. And this is a problem that has been called out by former President Thabo Mbeki, former President Kgalema Motlanthe, and many other veterans who have said that the direction that the ANC is taking is no longer a direction that they can support, and is no longer the direction of the ANC that they started out being part of. And I think what's also very important for people to understand is that it's beginning to look like you have an ANC who still has people who hold on to the old values, but the people with the new values are seeming to be the ones who are dominating this current ANC. If we look at, for example, the recent increase in the spate of political killings, if you look at the increase in the spate of killings because you got a tender and somebody else wanted that tender and they simply kill you to remove you from competition, that is the direction in which some of the ANC leaders are taking this organization. And I think it's important that, veterans and everybody who cares about South Africa keeps calling this out, because we cannot allow it to just continue, and we cannot allow it to just, for things to continue as if we are not seeing that our country is being destroyed by people who care only about corruption and who care only about their stomachs and enriching their own families.
Asanda, as you are speaking, of course, you mentioned some pertinent things, that are detrimental, perhaps, to the ANC. I mean, currently, we know that they are experiencing financial woes. That is being displayed, in the media, and it's displaying itself in court. And then what you've just said now about, the clash of values, seemingly from, your veterans and your new leadership now. Others predicting, that the ANC will fall below 50% in the coming elections in 2024. And of course, it's always been, criticized that the ANC, what we are seeing is self-imploding. What is then the trajectory for this party, particularly as we head to the elections that have been deemed watershed?
Well, I think we have on the one hand the potential of the ANC declining and getting less than the 50% that they need, the 50% plus, in which case they're going to have to be in coalition with smaller parties in order to continue to be able to govern. And then on the other hand, you have the potential of the ANC winning, but winning with a very, very small margin, because people are tired of the corruption and the ways in which they conduct themselves. And that's why I said, Fikile Mbalula's statement about veterans decampaigning and how, they don't want them to do that, it's really shooting themselves in the foot, because you want to be seen to be a political party that can handle internal conflict, that can handle internal strife. We've seen the division that, for instance, in the DA, that was caused when the DA suspended somebody for holding particular views about Palestine. And we've seen that, this always has potential to break up the party when a party does not allow, the ANC in particular is known to be a political party that calls itself the Church of Ideas, and it always has prided itself to be an organization that can handle a varied range of ideas and ideologies. And I think that's one of the things that has made it a mainstay in South Africa, because whether you are a conservative African or you are a liberal or progressive African, you will be able to find a part, and you'll be able to find a line within the ANC and a policy within the ANC that speaks to you. And so when we begin to see a very clear statement against dissent within the political party, that becomes a problem, because it paints a picture of an organization that doesn't want to reflect, that doesn't want to be held accountable, and that doesn't want to be challenged. Because I think it's important for any and all political parties to constantly be challenged about, are we still, on the mandate? Are we still espousing the values that this organization was started with? And do we still believe that what we used to stand for is what we stand for? And one of the most difficult things about the ANC is that to this day, it continues to have the best policies for South Africa, but it doesn't implement them. And when it does, it gets hampered by this very same corruption. So it's constantly shooting itself in the foot, despite the support that South Africans give it.